Elon Musk just made a decision that impacts only you. I want to share something that's both surprising and deeply personal, though it might not seem so at first. It's about a decision made by someone far away, a person many of us know by name, Elon Musk. What he decided impacts only you. I know how strange that sounds, but bear with me because the implications are woven into our lives in ways we often don't notice. I'll tell you a story of how that decision echoes, invisibly altering the shape of your day, your thoughts, maybe even yourself. He made a decision. It was easy. He thought strategically, calculated, and from his vantage point, beneficial, maybe even necessary. It could have been something about artificial intelligence regulation or a new policy at one of his companies. Perhaps a shift in Twitter's content moderation, a new algorithm for recommendations, or tightening terms on user behavior. The decision on its face seemed distant, abstract, belonging to the realm of powerful people and boardrooms. But its power seeps through like water seeping through concrete into spaces we believe are sealed, into you. Imagine one morning you wake up. The light through your window is gentle. You reach for your phone. You scroll. You check the news feed. You see what people are posting. Some posts that before would have been drowned out by others now are louder. Some voices that once were loud are quieter. Some images you see make you pause, others you scroll past. The algorithm that decides what you see has changed. The change is imperceptible at first, a few more posts with outrage, a few less with nuance. A thread on politics or social issues suddenly trending under your recommendations that never used to. A friend's post doesn't show up in your feed, even though you know they posted something early. A voice you followed, perhaps a small creator, no longer shows up. You wonder if maybe you unfollowed them. No, you check, they're still there. But the new rules, signal boosters, or suppression algorithms are pushing them down. You compare what you see now with what you saw before. You realize your window to the world has suddenly shifted. You're seeing more polarizing content, more emotionally charged material, more us versus them narratives. The connective tissue that once bound conversation. The empathy, moderation, and listening, is thinner. You don't fully understand why at first. You assume maybe you changed, maybe your interests have shifted, maybe you started engaging with provocative content and so the system gave you more of the same. And maybe you did unconsciously, but there's also part of you that resists that explanation because you remember being surprised by some of what you see. Moral dismay, frustration, a sense that what you thought was possible in discourse is less possible now. You reflect on the way you talk with friends online or offline. Before, you might have had more patience, trying to understand the argument rather than dismiss it. Now, the voices reaching you often seem simplified, loud, angry, more certain. It's easier to respond with certainty, less with curiosity. Maybe because the content you consume primes you that way. You feel at moments less calm, more reactive. You sleep less soundly, not always because of big worries, but because the noise in your brain accumulates, the sense of things online being more chaotic, unfair, hostile. You find yourself checking your phone later at night, dwelling on what someone said, a post, a comment, a thread you saw, something you regret responding to, or maybe something you wish you'd handled differently. You wake in the morning and check again. You feel a pull. See what's new, what people are saying. You sense that your beliefs are being nudged not by a single argument, but by many small ones, by repetition, by exposure to what's trending, what's popular, what's amplified. You find yourself less sure of what you once believed was the middle ground, more drawn into camps. Your relationships shift without you consciously intending. You notice that online discussions with people you care about become more fragmented. Sometimes you avoid bringing up topics you know will lead to heated debate because the new landscape seems more treacherous. Other times, you get defensive or lash out faster than you want. You might start filtering the people around you mentally, retreating to echo chambers because those feel safer. You might find more satisfaction when someone affirms your point of view loudly, with fewer moments when you're challenged thoughtfully but fairly. You may even change which sources you trust, because the ones you cared about seem less visible, playing by new rules, or ignored by larger audiences. Then there are the internal costs, the shape of your inner life, your sense of certainty, your moral fuel. Maybe before, you felt that your values, fairness, dialogue, nuanced understanding, mattered, that they had a place. Now, you sometimes wonder if those things are compatible with this new digital public square, where speed, visibility, and engagement matter more than truth or kindness. You may feel the urge to respond with more extreme words to be heard above the noise, or you hold back, fearful. Maybe you become more cynical, skeptical that words make a difference because it feels like the system favors volume over substance. You wrestle with the sense that your authentic voice might be swallowed up unless it echoes what's trending. Over time, the decision compounds. Day by day, what you consume shapes what you believe, even slightly. The emotional weight of exposure to relentless outrage or polarizing content takes its toll. The mental space for calm reflection squeezes out. You might find yourself more anxious, angrier, or just tired in a way that doesn't have an obvious cause. Perhaps you don't quite recognize the change until something strikes, you snap at someone, feel a new dissatisfaction with life, or realize you missed the old quiet spaces where you could think without interruption. Beyond your inner life, the decision affects what you give your attention to. You might begin to avoid certain topics or postpone engagements that feel like they'll result in conflict. You might spend more time scrolling and less time pursuing what previously brought you peace. Art, reading, nature, relationships, things that need breathing space. Maybe those retreat into smaller corners of your life, crowded out by the urgency of staying informed, vigilant, outraged. There's also a kind of isolation. You might feel alone in thinking certain things, believing more people would agree with your nuanced view if they could hear it, but the noise drowns out nuance. You may stop speaking up or start speaking in shorter bursts, less likely to try to persuade, more likely just to state your position because persuasion feels hopeless when incentive structures reward provocation, not understanding. All this affects your identity. You might come to see yourself as someone more adversarial, defensive, combative, not because you fundamentally changed, but because the environment pushed you to adapt. You become someone more skilled in debates, more aggressive in defending beliefs, maybe more hardened. Over time, you might lose touch with the parts of you that weren't always alert, always ready. You might detect changes in your mood, moments of hope feel rarer. Maybe you question whether progress is possible. Optimism seems naive. Sometimes you wonder, is the world going backward? Or have we lost something important about being human in how we relate to each other? You carry a sense of longing for gentler discourse, for spaces where people listen, are kind, where grace persists. In parallel, there's the practical. You notice small shifts in your routine, checking your phone first thing in the morning, starting the habit of reading hot takes, comparing your thoughts with what you saw online before starting your day. You adjust what you share, maybe holding back things you once shared freely because you worry about misinterpretation, blowback, judgment. Sometimes you fear that someone you respect has already swallowed the new narratives propagated by what's trending. You fear misalignment, that the people around you may be influenced, and the things you value are less appreciated. You feel subtle pressure to conform, to use the same terms, to pick the same battles, to have the same expressions of frustration or outrage because divergence seems risky, lonely, ignored. All the while, there's a tension inside. Wanting to resist, to find refuge, but feeling that resistance itself takes energy, and sometimes the energy feels scarce. You wonder, is it better to disengage to limit exposure? But that carries its own cost, feeling disconnected, uninformed, or at odds with where public opinion is going. Your creativity may suffer, thoughts you used to have but didn't share, those odd little murmurs, get smothered before they arise because you internalize that only extremes get recognized and rewarded. Maybe you stop writing, posting, or speaking, or you do but shape your words differently, tighter, punchier, safer. You might feel guilt that you're playing small, not speaking up, not pushing back, but also guilt that you lash out sometimes or lose patience. You feel fragmented, part of you wants peace, part wants to fight, part wants to preserve what's just and humane. You swing between fatigue and resolve. Sometimes, when disconnected from social media, things seem clearer. You breathe. You see the patterns, what's good in your life, what you value. You remember how small kindnesses, deep conversations, things unsaid yet felt matter. You remember the importance of silence, of listening, of not having to be loud to have value. But then you return, and the shapes of what's shown to you have shifted again. You struggle to reconcile that inner clarity with the outer chaos. You begin to seek out spaces that reflect what you miss. Quieter forums, books, conversations in person. You might cut out or reduce platforms, mute words or people, curate your own information intake. You build shields. But building those shields is itself work, mental, emotional labor. It is tiring. You wish for simpler, clear signals, kindness, calm. You wonder about the future, will discourse ever recover? Can platforms tilt back toward nuance? Will you ever again feel that what you say matters? Not because it's loud, but because it's thoughtful, because someone listens, because conversation is an exchange, not a battle. You think about duty, about speaking when others don't, about preserving truth and kindness, about being a guardrail. But also, you think you can't fight alone. You look around, many others are also trying, but they are fewer than before, quieter. The system rewards shock. You believe reward should be understanding. So you try to live in ways that prioritize meaning rather than volume. You try to be kind in small moments. It might sound distant at first, but its thread winds into the ordinary choices you make each morning and the thoughts you harbor when you scroll. A choice was made. It felt easy. Strategic. From a height where outcomes seem clear and beneficial, perhaps even essential. It could have been about regulating artificial intelligence, a new policy at one of his ventures, a tweak in a platform's rules, or a recalibration of how people are shown what they see. The decision, on the surface, sits in the realm of executives, dashboards, and quarterly reports. Yet its power slips through the cracks, like water finding a new path through a familiar dam and seeping into spaces we thought were sealed. Imagine waking to a gentle morning glow. Your fingertips brush the phone on your nightstand. You swipe, you open the quick glow of the feed, you catch what people are sharing. Some voices that used to be drowned out now rise louder, while others fall silent. Some images pull you up short, others glide by as if they weren't there at all. The engine behind what appears in your feed, the algorithm, has shifted. The sea changes, but you don't notice the tide at first. A few more posts that feel heated, a little less nuance tucked into threads. A topic you never expected to trend begins to surge in your recommendations. A friend's post you remember reading yesterday doesn't surface today, though you're sure they posted. They're still there, you check. But the signals have changed. The new rules, the new boosters, the subtle filters are nudging them down. You compare today's view with yesterday's, and you realize your window on the world has shifted. It's a tilt toward contention, toward immediacy, toward emotion. The connective fabric, empathy, patient listening, the sense that dialogue can survive disagreement, thins a fraction. You don't quite grasp why at first. You wonder if perhaps your own interests have changed, or if you have begun chasing more provocative content, so the system mirrors you back your own echo. Yet there remains a reserve of memory. The recollection of moments when discourse could be deeper, when nuance mattered, when the path forward seemed still possible. The change affects how you speak with others, online and off. Voices you once engaged with carefully now seem simplified, loud, and certain. Curiosity wanes in the face of certainty. The content you consume, its tone, its speed, its willingness to stir outrage, primes you to respond with immediacy. Sleep becomes a touch lighter, not from fear of a single worry, but because the brain is crowded with a chorus of restless signals, the noise of the online world stacking up in your head. You check your phone again before dawn, again at dusk, again before bed, chasing a fresh input, a new angle, a sense of being in the know. Belief, once anchored in a middle ground, begins to drift toward camps. Small shifts accumulate. The way you talk to a friend about a thorny issue, the way you measure what counts as reasonable discourse, the pace at which you decide to respond rather than reflect. The old rhythms of listening and weighing nuance feel more fragile, more optional, as if speed and visibility have become the currency that buys attention. Your relationships shift, too. Threads of conversation with people you care about become stitched with distance. Some topics feel dangerous to broach. Others flare into conflict more quickly. You retreat, sometimes, to quieter spaces, echo chambers that sound safer, where you're less likely to be contradicted, where affirmation rings loud. And inside, a quiet reconfiguration of self. You may notice yourself growing more adversarial, more on guard, more ready to defend a position with vigor. The habit of seeing yourself as a fair-minded listener is tested by a world that rewards loudness and rapid-fire responses more than measured, compassionate discourse. The parts of you that lingered in patience, in curiosity, in the delight of being surprised by a better argument, feel less present. The inner landscape changes shape quietly, as if you've grown a new muscle for debate, one that flexes easily under pressure and fatigue. Over time, the decision compounds. The daily diet of what you consume starts to mold what you believe, even if only by degrees. The weight of relentless outrage, the pull toward polarization, the sense that truth must now compete with virality, these lean on your mood, your appetite for quiet, your capacity for hopeful imagination. You notice the cost, the mental space for calm reflection shrinks, your sense of hope tightens, and the world you picture grows louder, faster, more fragmented. Yet the human need for gentleness, for listening, for spaces where conversation can breathe, persists. You catch yourself longing for the moments you once knew, when a difficult idea could be explored with patience, when kindness could thread a conversation, when a disagreement could end with a shared understanding rather than a louder cough of disagreement. You remember the quiet benefits of stepping away. Time to read, to walk, to be present with another person without the clamor of a notification ping. You begin to seek paths back toward balance. You prune the inputs you allow into your life, mute the noise that overwhelms nuance, curate your information intake with intention. You turn to spaces that reward listening as much as speaking, that value clarity over shock, that treat compassion as a strength, not a weakness. You feel the pull to live with more meaning and less noise, to give your attention to what nourishes you rather than what merely commands it. In this struggle, you realize you are not alone. You are one of many trying to navigate a shifting public square that rewards the loud over the thoughtful, the immediate over the enduring. And while the rewards that come from being heard for rant, certainty, and bravado feel seductive, you've learned to prize the reward that comes from understanding, from a dialogue that seeks truth and kindness alike. You aim to be a guardrail, not a weapon, to speak when others remain silent, but to listen more than you shout. So you press on. You accept the fragility of the moment, the difficulty of rebuilding spaces where discourse can be human again, where debates are not battles but exchanges of perspectives. You imagine a future in which platforms tilt back toward nuance, where your voice still carries weight because it is thoughtful, not just loud. You nurture the belief that attention can be a force for clarity and care, not merely for amplification of the loudest. And you keep in mind the simple, stubborn truth. You are not defined by the most heated moment on a screen. You are defined by what you choose to value in the quiet, by the way you listen, by the way you help someone feel seen, by the way you resist the pull to reduce another person to an argument. You choose to live with intention, to seek spaces where you can be fully human, where conversation remains an exchange, not a battleground. Because though distant, has shown itself in your everyday life. It has shaped what you notice, how you respond, what you protect, and what you hope for. And in that shaping, you find a kind of agency, the choice to recover balance, to defend kindness, to keep faith that thoughtful discourse can endure in a world that often prizes speed over substance. You choose to keep listening. You choose to keep speaking, with care. You choose to believe that even in a world of loud signals, there remains room for a quieter, truer kind of conversation. What follows is a decision, made far away by a name you've heard countless times, a decision that, in a quiet way, touches your every day.